A man compared himself to the Colombian drug lord Pablo Escobar before being jailed for running drugs in London. Shahin Ahmed proudly bragged that he ran the streets of Tower Hamlets and he's been locked up for 9.5 years following a police operation targeting drug supply in East London. 34-year-old appeared at Snaresbrook Crown Court on September the 13th, where he was sentenced for being concerned in the supply of Class A drugs. In June 2022, officers raided two of Ahmed's addresses and found a large quantity of Class A drugs and over £60,000 in cash. In a video released by police, Ahmed was saying, 10 years in the gutter on a curfew, and I'm still rolling like Pablo, cuz. There's only one Pablo out here. East London's finest, you understand? Remember that. Officers identified 3 sophisticated drug lines running under the banner of Killer from December 2021 to June 2022. Ahmed was arrested and taken into custody, and he was later charged and remanded. One of the detectives said afterwards that Ahmed now has even more common with his framed idol, a significant jail sentence. As we know, Escobar was one of the world's most notorious traffickers, known for sponsoring charity projects and soccer clubs, and shared some of his riches with local communities, thus drawing comparisons to Robin Hood figure. But his cartel unleashed some madness throughout Colombia, and he was dubbed the King of Coke, and Ahmed's idol was one of the wealthiest criminals in history. So the court heard that Ahmed was targeted by officers working under Operation Yamata, which focuses on dismantling drug supply networks across the city and pursuing those operating them. Detective Inspector Sam Bennett from Operation Yamata said, my team seized a number of devices from Ahmed, and our examination, my officers found a video of Ahmed proudly bragging to an unknown passenger about his criminal activity, referring to himself as Pablo and running the streets. Said drugs are inextricably linked to violence and misery on our streets, and they blight communities and ruin lives. To see Ahmed talk so casually and proudly about his involvement in the concern, but it also motivates us and makes us even more determined to bring people like him to justice. Thanks to my officers and their hard work and diligence, Ahmed is now even more in common with his famed idol, a significant jail sentence. Officers found Ahmed conceal more than £600,000 of illicit cash through his business accounts, and detectives from the Met's Economic Crime Unit are now working to retrieve this under the Proceeds of Crime Act. A teenager's promising life came crashing down around him when police officers found him hiding in a bush and discovered a loaded firearm in his JD sports bag. Sonny Daly was caught with a converted blank firing gun when he was out dealing heroin and crack in a park. He was allegedly put to work in the drugs trade after racking up a debt. The judge today told the former junior boxer and community volunteer it was a terrible shame he had fallen so far. Liverpool Crown Court heard that police were on patrol in Everton on the afternoon of July the 25th this year when they spotted Daly with a JD sports bag over his shoulder. The 18-year-old appeared to be dealing to drug addicts, and officers attempted to stop him as a result. Derek Jones, the prosecutor, described how he instead discarded some of these illicit substances in his possession and ran off towards Everton Road. Daly then continued on to Bright Street before turning down an alleyway leading to Church and Court, where PCs heard rustling from a bush and discovered the defendant's hiding place. His bag was also located nearby along further wraps of drugs, and when officers looked inside, they immediately noted what appeared to be a firearm alongside £890 in cash. A total of 31 wraps of crack, worth an estimated £660, and 44 wraps of cocaine valued at £880, and 22 wraps of heroin with a street value of £440 was seized. Daly told officers at the scene that the weapon was fake, but when analysed, it was found to be a converted Turkish-manufactured blank firing pistol which was successfully test-fired. It was also loaded 4 bullets which had themselves been converted from blanks. However, the gun was not linked to any previous sheets. Upon being told that Daly had no previous convictions, Judge Simon Medlin KC told the defence counsel, your client is 18 and of previous character. What a terrible shame. He replied, I don't think the word tragedy is over egging the pudding. He is a young man, I'm sure your honour will acknowledge from references, not only had a lot of promise in society, but had already contributed to a lot of other organisations which he was involved in, including an amateur boxing club in Everton Youth Community, where he received Member of the Year a couple of years previously. To have fallen from a young man of such promise illustrates some underlying problems in the community. The judge said it is indefinitely depressing. Some people seem to think that dealing drugs is glamorous. It is not. It destroys people's lives, and guns in particular are an absolute menace. Continued, is utterly ashamed. He did ask me to express his shame and regret over his involvement, and he knows not only has he let himself down, but his family, but he recognises the ills that this perpetuates on society. He was at college and looking for work on the railways. He was heavily involved as an amateur boxer, but he stopped at 15 and sadly began taking drugs and incurred a debt. It is that which led to the commission of this offence. The pressure was applied to him to deal drugs and carry a firearm, which he believed was a fake one. Since he's been in prison on remand, he has not wasted his time. He's employed as a wing cleaner and he wishes to try and re-engage with getting a job on the railways upon his discharge from prison. So Daly admitted possession of prohibited firearm, possession of ammunition without a certificate, and possession of heroin and crack, and he was jailed for 5 years and 4 months. And in this next story, a gang who used the Southend guest house as a base for selling Class A drugs have been jailed. Officers within Operation Raptor Unit, which is dedicated to tackling county lines drugs dealing, secured the sentences against 22-year-old Justice Ayodi Khan and 21-year-old Devaston Francis. The pair were runners for the Shadow Drug Line, which brought Class A drugs from London to Southend. 21st of May this year, officers were on patrol in Southend when they spotted a large group of people congregating near an alleyway. The officers observed Francis leaving a nearby guest house and walking towards the group. Due to suspicions around reported drug dealing in the area, officers stopped Francis and detained him for a search under the Misuse of Drugs Act. A small plastic pot containing 40 wraps of Class A drugs was seized. Francis tried to claim to officers the substance was sugar and that he was an entrepreneur. A phone, which was continuously ringing, was also seized alongside a sum of cash. The guest house was subsequently searched and Odayakon was detained inside. Further quantities of Class A drugs and cash totaling around £1,800 was seized from the property. Oyedokon admitted possession with intent to supply crack, being concerned in the supply of crack and heroin, possessing criminal property. And Francis again admitted possession of intent to supply and being concerned in the supply of crack and heroin. Both appeared at Basildon Crown Court and were jailed for 32 months. Sergeant Rob Mail of Operation Raptor South said, "Our investigation established the two runners, both from outside Essex, had stayed in a guest house in the area for the purpose of supplying Class A drugs. This is one of the emerging tactics we are seeing drugs gangs employ, but as this case proves, it is a tactic with little value, as it places no limits on our ability to trace, monitor and carry out enforcement against those we know to be involved in Class A drug supply dealing." Drug dealers have very little room for manoeuvre in Essex, and he said, "My team all too often the harm, see the substances caused and the violence which stems from this awful trade." He said, "We are more active than ever in building cases against the drug lines against these substances from London into our country." So guys, there's a number of stories coming out from the streets of the UK. It's your boy GC. Keep it locked, keep it real.